So, very good evening, friends. Meeting after a gap of 1 week. I was busy with some work. That's why it was not possible to conduct seminar regularly. So, let us start again. And we're discussing regarding the Roberts philosophy and second year syllabus. The chapter number 17, we have to start with the susceptibility. It is a very important topic practically also as well as from exam point of view also, because susceptibility, if you are able to judge a susceptibility, you are able to come to the right conclusion of the potency. And that's why it is so much necessary to understand the concept of susceptibility, what exactly susceptibility is there, and what are the factors which controls the susceptibility or which enhances the susceptibility, all those things which we have to learn. So let us open the chapter number 17 from Roberts' philosophy and go ahead with the susceptibility chapter. Everything that has life is more or less influenced by circumstances and environment. This is true in the natural growth and development of the vegetable kingdom. Certain flora develops fully only in certain altitudes, and when swept by the constant moisture of the ocean. They will take on an entirely different form under other circumstances and environment. The trees in open show the constant effect of pressure from prevailing winds. Years ago, Connecticut horticulturalists raised qualities of the peaches. Then suddenly all the peach trees died. And for about 50 years, no peaches were grown in the state. Then Mr. J.H.L. discovered that peaches throw only in soil rich in potash. Returning to Connecticut, he analyzed the soil where peaches had failed and found that there was very little or no potash in that soil. If potash is supplied, luscious peaches will grow abundantly. So he started explaining chapter with the introduction that how susceptibility is important and how this susceptibility, that environment plays a role in the life, and not only with the life of human being, not only life of the animals, but also of the plants. So plants also, they are very susceptible to certain specific environment. The environment doesn't mean that it is just a air or just an environment surrounding you. It contains each and everything. For plants, it is the soil also is an environment. And he has given very good example of the peaches plant and why they died. Then someone worked about it, and he said that it is the soil, if it is rich in potash, the peaches develops. If it is very less in potash, then such certain plants die. So see how environment affects the existence of a life. So environment plays very vital role in the plants. Then how this environment affects the human life. It is so important. It is an inherent capacity of the living things to react to the external stimuli is the susceptibility. And he has given very simple example of plants to introduce the chapter. And he has given very good example of peaches. And then he says, the same susceptibility to the two influences is true in the animal kingdom. Animals from certain parts of the earth's surface develop peculiarities of their own, which are entirely different from those from their close relatives elsewhere. They can withstand certain influences and hold their own under adverse conditions, which would be fatal to another of the same species developed under differing circumstances. In other words, they developed a protective immunity against their environmental conditions. The polar bear is immune to the rigors of the Arctic, but is susceptible and soon succumbs to the influence of warm climates. The Bengal tiger thrives in the humidity of the Indian jungles. Other members of the tiger family have adapted themselves to the altitude and rarefied atmosphere of the slopes of Himalayas and the searching winds of those heights. Either is susceptible to the ravages incident to the change of temperature. So same is true. Whatever is true in the plants is true for the animals. Every animal adapts to the surrounding. Every animal tries to adapt specific environment. And that's why they react in a specific manner and they develop that. If that animal goes to the another place, then there might be a chance that he may succumb to the things because the environment affects him. If it persists over there, then it tries to struggle and again adapt with the situation because it is an inherent tendency of the human body to react to the external stimulus and to develop such adaptation. And that's why it is true for the human being. There are, if we'll think about the Indian average male and females, you'll find it out that maximum height and weight. Height is generally very specific for Indian climates. If you go to the Europeans, they are very tall. If you go to the African countries, many times you get dwarfed varieties because of the surroundings. It is because it is the process of adaptation inside the human being, and because of which there are changes in different races, different places. And this is the importance of susceptibility in the human life. So if it has capacity to affect the plants, if it has capacity to affect the animals, it has capacity to affect the human beings. And then further he says, we may define susceptibility primarily as a reaction of the organism to external and internal influences. Very specific definition, very specific, where he explains that primarily it is a reaction of the organism to both the stimulus, not only the external but also internal. Why he has said internal? He has said is very specifically to the internal because it is related with human beings more. The human things, and because of which his reaction depends upon it. So it not only depends upon external stimulus, there is reaction. Before reaction, there is thinking, which is an internal reaction to the situation. And that's why there are two types of reactions, the external as well as internal. While we may point out striking illustrations of the susceptibility in the vegetable kingdom and among the lower animals, the best illustrations are found among those human beings with whom we come in contact. We see very frequently the susceptibility to climatic conditions, as well as all other phases of environment. One person will thrive in rigorous climate where another will become seriously ill. One will thrive in dampness to which another would succumb. Altitude affects some individuals kindly and some adversely. The seashore improves one man's condition while it makes another man ill. And this is very important thing. If we are thinking that it affects the animals, it affects the plants, then human is most sensitive. Then human reacts. And this reaction of the human being is very, very important. Some humans, they're happy in damp climate, whereas exactly opposite is true with the some human being. They get tremendously aggravated by damp weather, which is going away at present. So there are patients who are susceptible to damp weather, get suffered from the rheumatism, they suffers from the specifically asthmatic attacks. While there are certain types of people who enjoys these, the causticum, the naxomica, the heparsulfuricum, they like this dampness because they feel better. Whereas natrum salt, the rustox, the dulcamara, they get aggravated in this specific weather. Because their susceptibility is different. Susceptibility to the environment is different. Their reactions are different. And that's why it is too much necessary to understand these things. If we are able to understand the patient's susceptibility, then we'll understand his nature, his disease, as well as we'll judge the susceptibility and come to the right potency on the basis of that. The power of assimilation and nutrition is one of the phases of susceptibility. One easily assimilates a certain kind of food while another finds the same food indigestible. And this is true with the foods. Yes. Sometimes some people, they are very sensitive to the very specific entity. I have seen that a person who was very sensitive to the onion, He used to take onion and he used to get the diarrhea and vomiting. But he was very typical thuja. There was another patient who was very susceptible to the onions, was ornithogalum. But there are people who likes the onions and they never get suffered and they eats it more, because every man's reacts to the environmental things in a different manner. Then that's why everyone's reaction depends upon their own susceptibility. And that's why the next sentence which he has written over there, that is very important, that one man's meat is another man's poison. This is 20 marks question in the exams. Explain in detail. One man's meat is nothing but the another man's poison. Explain in detail. Means you have to write down answer of susceptibility, question of susceptibility. It's only the susceptibility. That's what you have to write it over there in the exams. So those who are students who are attending session, they must take it this note that such type of question comes, and these are the questions where your intellect you have to utilize. This is nothing but you have to explain what is susceptibility. So this is true that one man's meat, someone who used to eat meat and nothing happens and he enjoys, the another man gets suffered from it and gets the sausage poisoning like arsenic album. Human beings are susceptible to the infection or contagion in varying degree. One man will become infected in contact with diseased individuals, while another will experience no ill effects whatever. One person is made ill by noxious plants, while another man can handle them with impunity. Certain people are capable of making wonderful proving of the drugs, whereas other will show no reaction whatever. And this is the individuality and individual susceptibility. So certain persons, they cannot get affected because of specific drugs. They never gets affected because of specific things. And that's why they never show the reaction. But certain people, they're very sensitive. Minute dose or minute amount of touch can produce the symptomatology in them. This is true in proving, this is true in even in day-to-day activities, and you're going to get that many people who have survived even in very specific COVID-19 epidemic. And there are people who used to suffer because of COVID-19. It depends upon the susceptibility of the organism to the specific entity, even though the organism was virulent. So this happens. Sudden change of weather since yesterday, and patients are coming with joint pains, with body ache, with severe fever, because they are susceptible to that environment. But many people never suffer. They enjoy. They goes into the range. They enjoys the moment, and they never suffer. This is individuality. This is susceptibility. So susceptibility is an inherent capacity to react to external stimulus of that specific individual. So it varies from one person to another person. All these reactions have to do with susceptibility. In analyzing susceptibility, we find it is very largely an expression of the vacuum in the individual. This is illustrated by the desire for food. The vacuum attracts and pulls for things most needed that are on the same plane of vibration as the want in the body. This is again intelligence of Robert. Everywhere Robert has shown his intelligence. Whenever he has explained Sora, he has compared it with the deficiency. So deficiency and Sora, he has written one good chapter. Then regarding psychosis, regarding syphilis, he has compared it with the periodic table. And here again, he uses his intelligence. Whatever his body needs, there is a vacuum and it attracts. If the body is less with the iron and calcium, there is a craving for pica. There is a craving for mud, eating the mud. There is craving for eating the indigestible food. This is automatically developed. Body attracts those. That is what the word which he has used, that it develops vacuum. Contagious diseases thrive in childhood because of extreme susceptibility to the miasmatic influence. This susceptibility has an attractive force which draws to itself disease which is on the same plane of vibration and which tends to correct this miasmatic deficiency. After having drawn to itself this other disease manifestation, the child becomes immune to further onslaughts of the same condition. His system has become somewhat cleared by this attraction of what Hahnemann calls a similar disease, a condition. So here he explains that in childhood, many people, many children, they suffer from very acute disorder because susceptibility is very high in children and infants. It is too high, and that's why they attract whatever the diseases are there. They used to get support because there is an attraction, there is a reaction, hyper susceptibility. When they get affected because of that, they develops the specific immune reactions, and thereafter their susceptibility comes again to the normality. Then when they again goes to the same type of environment, they never suffers or succumbs like earlier experience. This is how the susceptibility plays very vital role. Susceptibility becomes gradually tapered and comes to the normal as the age advances, and at the time of adolescence, and when person becomes adult, it comes to the normal phase. The hypersusceptibility gradually tapers off and comes and reaches to the normal level. So these are things because of which you're going to find the reactions in the human beings at different ages, at different places. So children reacts in a different manner to the same situation as the adult reacts and the old person reacts. Everyone's reaction to the same situation is different. Children might produce very acute reaction, whereas the adult never shows so much, but they adapts it. An old person, they are absolutely not susceptible at all to the same situation, because age is one of the important factor which modifies the susceptibility. And that's why we have to take into consideration the age of the patient while judging the susceptibility. Susceptibility varies in degree in different patients and at different times in the same patient. The sentence is very important. Susceptibility is varies in degree in different patients. That's true. Everyone knows every individual is different, but at different times in the same patient. Today, I'm happy. I'm not susceptible to anything. I'm enjoying every moment. But susceptibility is so delicate thing that it gets changed. Tomorrow, I might not be having same susceptibility. It might get high. It might get low. It is a so sensitive entity which is changeable, and that's why my susceptibility to the situation might be looking normal today, but it might varies tomorrow. It might varies after some time, and that's why the sentence is very clear. Susceptibility varies in degree in different patients and different times in the same patient. Homeopathic application of remedy is an illustration of meeting the susceptibility and filling the vacuum that is present in the sick individual. Now he is turning towards the potency. He is turning towards the remedy. He is explaining that it is homeopathic remedy which fulfills that susceptibility. This is very important to understand. I want to share you something here. One example: patient comes to you in acute phase today in such a damp weather with severe body ache, with joint pains, and he had just got wet in rains and developed very typical severe body ache, fever, and he becomes so restless, cannot sleep in one position, moving here and there, and very acute stage because his susceptibility is high. That's why he is expressing disease in such a manner. You see his tongue, his triangular red tip, and you reach to the rush tox. Now, the question is that in what potency you are going to prescribe rush tox for that patient. Here, the question of susceptibility plays very vital role. The patient is in hyper susceptible state, and because of which he is reacting so acutely to you. So you give rush tox 10 and rush tox 10 3 doses, ask him to come tomorrow, and next day patient comes and he's happy. His body has stamped, joint pains have been stopped, and he has very nicely recovered, but he has developed pure blister tumor. And as he is saying, doctor, see what has developed this, and this is little bit burning. Now see the susceptibility. Susceptibility is very high, and Restox has matched that susceptibility, brought him to the low level or normal level of susceptibility, and with which he is reacting externally at the most external surface, and now susceptibility is low. But still remedy is Restox. Now in that patient, you don't have to give Restox 10 m. Now it is the susceptibility which has decreased. Now it is your time to give the Restox 6 if it has been needed. Sometimes it might disappear by its own, but if it is not disappearing, then you have to come to the low potency of Restox. So in one same patient with the same remedy, because of change of susceptibility, we have to think about the change of potency. You can go from low to high or high to low. It doesn't matter. It depends upon the situation with which you have to go. And the second sentence which he has mentioned is very clear. Homeopathic application of remedy is an illustration of meeting the susceptibility and filling the vacuum that is present in the sick individual. In other words, the vibrations of the sick individual call aloud for something to meet the need. The provings of the remedy on a healthy individual gives us the basis of similarity of the remedy to the sick individual, because in the provings of the remedy produces an artificial susceptibility similar to the susceptibility of the sick individual. The application of homeopathic remedy in sickness satisfies this natural susceptibility. No matter how little reaction of the remedy develops in the provings on a healthy individual, the susceptibility is greatly accentuated in sickness. The indications for the remedy show the susceptibility in marked degree, and patient will respond, because the similar potent remedy is always stronger than the susceptibility, so that it fully satisfies the morbid condition. This satisfaction is based on the universal law governing the symptomatically similar remedy. A patient may be susceptible to the number of remedies, but the greatest susceptibility is manifest in the most similar, in other words, the similimum. They would influence somewhat, however, by nearly similar. Now he is giving very simple example. In the state of health, if we prove the remedy, the patient starts showing its manifestation. It varies from one prover to another prover. One prover might show 5 symptoms, another prover might show 15 symptoms, and another prover might show you 25 symptoms. And one prover might not show you a symptom, because everyone's susceptibility to that specific stimulus of the drug for which you are giving for the proving is different. So we have a collected totality of that drug from different provers. We know how the person reacts to that specific drug in low potency, in high potency, and because of which we can think. The same thing happens when the disease happens to be there in the individual. So in an acute agony, acute state, when patient comes, patient shows very typical acute manifestation with a very high susceptibility. And if it is too high, then you have to catch that susceptibility, and you have to select your potency, which will be more stronger than the natural disease. Then you have to satisfy the natural disease susceptibility with the help of your higher susceptibility state, which you're going to produce with the high potency of the remedy. So higher the susceptibility, higher is the potency, less is the repetition, because patient is already in susceptible state. You just have to give one stimulus and wait. In acute, don't repeat so much. In high potency, you don't have to repeat. You just give one or two doses or 3 doses and wait for the result. Ask the patient to return tomorrow, see the patient, and then think about the repetition. So this paragraph defines exactly the way he explains that vacuum the susceptibility produces, and accordingly you have to satisfy that with the help of remedy susceptibility. And if you are able to do that, then you are going to produce very instantaneous results with the patient. So to understand susceptibility is very, very important thing which we have to go for it. This is too important to understand. That's why this chapter, I will say, I will tell everyone, you should not miss. This chapter will going to give and teach you many things regarding the potency selection. So that's all for today. Tomorrow it is not possible to conduct the lecture. We'll meet on Wednesday. We'll directly start with the next part of this chapter on Wednesday. So that's all for today. Today evening we're going to start with very important remedy, that is lachesis meota, a very depicting remedy and important to us. There are n number of cases we can share with the lachesis of the lachesis. So today evening at 8:15 p.m. we'll meet and we'll discuss the lachesis. So that's all for today. Thanks a lot for attending session, and instead of tomorrow, we'll meet on Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.